Hey, my name is Josh Korak. I'm a mental health counselor in the Northern Colorado area. In this space, I get the chance to interview professionals in the field, talk about mental illness, self-care, and so much more. With this show, I ask you to join me in doing what one of my favorite philosophers, a Buddhist monk, Thich Nhat Hanh, says. Smile, breathe, and go slowly. This is Care with Korak. Hey everyone, welcome back to Care with Korak. This is Josh, your host. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're following me on this journey to Season 2. Season 1 was a lot of fun, and my hope with this season is that it is going to blow Season 1 out of the water. So we've got some very special guests coming up, including today. Today we have the one and only Sean Swarner. Sean is just amazing. I don't even know. I don't know where to start. I've got a whole list of things to read about him, but man, just the quality person he is just, it's unmatched. Sean is voted one of the top 8 inspirational people of all time. If that doesn't say enough, I don't know what will. Sean's first goal was to crawl 8 feet from the hospital bed to the bathroom. Somehow, he went from there to redefine the impossible by climbing 29,000 plus feet to the top of Mount Everest with only one functioning lung. From there, he stood atop the highest point on all 7 continents, skied to the South and North Poles, and completed the Hawaii Ironman. Sean has been interviewed by Steve Harvey, CBS Evening News, Fox and Friends, The Today Show, Good Morning America, The Early Show, Huffington Post, Outside the Lines, Sports Center, Washington Post, USA Today, Sports Center, and you name it probably, and he's been there. His numerous articles with thought leaders such as Sir Richard Branson and Archbishop Desmond Tutu, if I'm saying that right, put him in a category by himself. With only one functioning lung, a prognosis of 14 days to live, and being in a medically induced coma for a year, Sean Swarner is the first cancer survivor to stand on top of the world, Mount Everest. Sean has broken through defined human limitation in order to redefine the way the world views success. Sean was diagnosed with 2 deadly, different, and unrelated forms of cancer, once at the age of 13 and again at the age of 16. After an incredibly poor prognosis and being read his last rites, which Sean talks about in this episode, Sean astounded the medical community when he survived both these brutal diseases. He realized that after defeating cancer twice, no challenge would ever be too great, no peak too high. Sean proved his theory when he crested the peak of Mount Everest. As the first cancer survivor to do so, Sean decided to continue climbing and has since topped the highest peaks in Africa, Europe, South America, Australia, Antarctica, and North America, thus completing what we call the 7 summits of the world. Upon skiing to both the South and the North Poles, Sean completed what's called the Explorer's Grand Slam. With the completion of the Ironman World Championship in Hawaii, Sean is the only person in history to accomplish these inhuman feats. As Sean continues to defy the odds, tests his own endurance, and inspire and motivate people around the world, he shares his message of healing, hope, and triumph with cancer patients worldwide. Sean also serves as a source of inspiration as the founder of the nonprofit organization, the Cancer Climber Association, as author of the book Keep Climbing, and as a motivational speaker to corporations, universities, and other organizations around the globe. Sean has been the recipient of multiple awards and honors, including the American Lung Association Inspiration Award, the ESPN Never Give Up Award, and even has his own Sean Swarner Recognition Day in the state of Ohio, which I think is just awesome. In this episode, Sean and I discuss his story with cancer, his dreams of doing the biggest thing he could imagine. Spoiler, it's Mount Everest. We talk more on my trip to Aconcagua, the tallest peak in South America, and how Sean inspired me and helped coach me through that, and the idea of hope. For more information on Sean, check out his website, www.seanswarner.com, or check out his social media at Sean Swarner. Sean, as I mentioned before, is the author of the book Keep Climbing, How I Beat Cancer and Reached the Top of the World, so make sure to check the link in my bio for that. Sean also recently just published another book, and it's the first of 7. If you don't get it already, it's the 7 summits, right? And so the first one is Everest, being unstoppable, right? Conquering your Everest. And it's the first in a series of 7. I believe Sean mentions that he's working on his next one right now, and it's going to be about Kilimanjaro. So make sure to check the link below to get these books. I've read Keep Climbing. I haven't had a chance to read the new Everest book, but Keep Climbing alone is just a great book, and one that inspires a lot of hope. It's inspired me a lot. It's inspired me to become a counselor. It's inspired me to do Aconcagua and so much more in life. And Sean is just someone I'm truly honored to call a friend, and very, very grateful for his time here on Care with Korak. So let's not waste any more time. Let's get into it. Welcome back to Care with Korak Season 2. This is Care with Korak with Sean Swarner. Hey, Sean.
There we go. Sorry about that. I had the
What's going on, man?
Zoom link.
Yeah, I was wondering if you did. I forgot to delete that, and I switched over to this platform, so hopefully it wasn't too confusing.
Got it. No, not a problem. Let me turn. There we go.
Well, what's going on, man? It's so great to finally get connected.
Yeah.
Like in this format, at least, you know.
Right.
I feel like we've just been bouncing around phone calls, emails, missing each other in Puerto Rico, and
No kidding. Puerto Rico, Africa. My wife and I took a drive to San Antonio, Texas. We just got back a few days ago. It was 14 hours each way. Yeah, but it was a good trip.
Good. Yeah. Well, good, man. I mean, I know you've been so busy traveling around, so I really appreciate you taking some time for this. And I'm just so excited for today. I know your story is just, one in a million, one in a billion probably. And, it's just going to be such a fun one to share. So I'm really grateful that you took some time out.
Good.
Well, cool. Well, why don't we start out by just having you kind of share a little bit about your story? I'm kind of thinking this one more than most will probably be more of just kind of a narrative and you sharing your journey just because of how unique it is and how special. I'd love for you to kind of just start at the beginning and share what you're comfortable with.
Absolutely. I'm comfortable sharing pretty much anything.
I figured you would be, but
my life's an open book, and I want people to hopefully take some inspiration from it, and more importantly, I would suppose empowerment, because there are tons of inspirational stories out there. But I want to empower people to take action.
Yeah. Well, I know that's not going to be that hard to do. I mean, your story is so inspiring. I mean, it's inspired me. It's inspired me to do what I did with Aconcagua and just in general, just been an inspiration in my life. And so this really is just such a huge honor, getting you on and sharing your story some more.
I appreciate that, man. I'm excited.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, why don't we just kind of start at the beginning and just kind of tell us a little bit about who you are. Maybe share just a little bit about what you're currently doing, and then you can kind of just start at the beginning and start wherever you feels right.
Sure. Well, what I'm currently working on now is my second book's out. I'm working on an online program called the Big Hill Challenge, where they kind of.
Which is your second book?
The first one's Keep Climbing, How I Beat Cancer and Reached the Top of the World. The second one is right here.
Oh boy.
Well, Being Unstoppable, Conquering Your Everest.
Oh, perfect. I'm excited for it. Is it out yet?
It is. Yeah, you can get it on Amazon or go to my website and order it there.
Okay.
But it covers my trip to Everest, but it's unlike any book I've ever read, because embedded in the stories I go through my cancers and everything. Embedded in the stories are lessons in how I did what I did. Because my first goal was literally to crawl 8 feet from the hospital bed to the bathroom. And then I went on to climb Everest, in the highest mountain on every continent, and go on to do what no human's ever done before. And during my keynote presentations, or I'm sorry, after my presentations, people would come up and they would say, "Oh, that's a great story, but how did you do it?" I started thinking, well, that's a great question. I don't know. So that's kind of, this is book 1 of 7, helping people walk through doing not necessarily what I did, because not everyone's going to climb Everest, but everyone has an Everest to climb. So this is insights into how you can do it as well, because it's not, it doesn't tell you what to do. You know, there are so many books out there saying, you know, if you do this and this will be your result, but that just doesn't work for the majority of people. You know, we're all different. People. We all have different personal core values. So this actually shares with you how to figure it out on your own. And you have more empowerment that way. You have more ownership of it, as opposed to, you know, following a blueprint, which doesn't work for most people anyhow. Make your own.
Right. So you said book of 1 of 7. Does that mean each book is going to be about each of the 7 summits that you did?
Correct. Yeah. The second one I just finished is called Kilimanjaro Into the Self. And that's not available yet. And I just finished Elbrus, which is the highest mountain in Europe. Okay. And I haven't come up with a subtitle for that one yet. But this is, like I said, Conquering Your Everest. And then the next one is Into the Self, Kilimanjaro, and then Elbrus something. I don't know yet.
Yeah. Ooh, that's exciting. I'm definitely going to have to add it to my list. So, yeah. No, that's great. So cool. Would you mind just kind of starting at the beginning, sharing your story of how you started with climbing Everest, right? What even led up to all that? I know that I know, but for my audience, would you be willing to share your story?
It's absolutely. It's interesting how the whole thing came about. So just real quick backstory. I was born and raised in a super small town in Ohio, and went to Westminster College, small liberal arts school in Pennsylvania. And then I went to further my education to get my master's and my doctorate in Jacksonville, Florida, at the University of North Florida.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know you had your doctorate.
I don't.
And your master's.
I don't.
Oh,
so I was working towards those when it was the first time I actually looked back at my life and tried to figure out pretty much what the hell was going on.
Oh, wow.
Because I was thousands of miles away from my family. I could reinvent myself. Everyone in my hometown knew me as Cancer Boy. And even people in college ended up knowing my background, with my medical background. And it was interesting because I saw this as a new opportunity to be who I wanted to be and not be defined by the cancer. So I was actually...
Because that must have been such a huge part growing up, especially when the cancer was active. That must have just been such a huge part of how others defined you and how others viewed you as a person.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And
wow.
You know, looking back at it too, when I was in college, it's when you're out on a date, it's not exactly, you know, dinner conversation. Like, how do you bring it up? Like, oh, hey, I'm a survivor. It's not dinner conversation. Oh yeah, you know, the basketball team did great. The football team did great. You know, what are you studying? What's your major? Oh, by the way, I'm a 2-time terminal cancer survivor. Like, you drop the bomb and then what? Like,
right. Right. I mean, that they were just both so monumental, right?
Absolutely. So I when I was down in Florida, I realized I had an opportunity to either leave that behind or figure out what it meant to me. And when I was studying down there, I was actually working on my education to be a psycho-oncologist, which is a psychologist for cancer patients. So I knew I had been through a lot, and I wanted to help not only the patients, but also the families as well, because it's not an individual disease. But I realized that I hadn't dealt with my own issues. So that's when I decided to stop. I took a sabbatical from my studies, and by sabbatical, I mean I dropped out because I'm probably not going back. And I decided to go climb Everest. And I came up with that concept because I just kept thinking of a higher and higher platform to help other people who were afflicted by the disease.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
it doesn't really make sense when I say logically I came up with Everest, but I just kept thinking higher and higher, and logically it was the highest platform in the world.
Right. So backing up a little bit, maybe for my audience who hasn't read your book, isn't familiar with your story, you're a cancer survivor, right? Can you tell us a little bit about what that was like for you?
Sure. So the first one was when I was 13, diagnosed with advanced stage 4 Hodgkin's lymphoma. They told my parents, "Hey, your firstborn son's going to be dead in 3 months." So
Mm.
as a 13-year-old, I had an expiration date, and I remember being bloated, 60, 70 pounds overweight, lost all the hair in my body, lost all my friends. I lost everything. My life was on pause. And then I remember going, I was in remission for about a year. So I had chemotherapy. I had everything for 10 months, 11 months. Then I was in remission for about a year, and then going in for a checkup for the first cancer, they found a second cancer. And it was completely unrelated. I was diagnosed with two primary cancers.
And how old were you did you say how old you were with the second cancer?
Almost 16 years old.
Almost
Yeah,
16.
and the
Okay.
reason I remember that is because I was getting my driver's license, and I was bald, and I was the only person in Ohio that they actually let me take my driver's license picture with my hat on. So yeah,
Really?
yeah, like I said, growing up in a small town, I knew the lady behind the counter. My dad knew her, my mom knew her. She's a family friend, and they knew what
Mm.
was going on. So like, yeah, it's just a 16-year-old license. You can get it retaken when you get well, because no one expected me to live.
Right.
So like, okay, well, get it
Wow.
taken. That's fine. And the second time around, the doctors told my parents that I only had 14 days to live.
Wow. So the first time was 3 months.
Months.
This time it was 2 weeks.
Exactly. Yeah. And I remember being in the hospital bed and laying in a hospital bed, and at my feet, a man of the cloth came in and started reading me my last rites. I was read my last
Mm.
rites as a 16-year-old, and I looked at my parents kind of jokingly, and I'm like, I'm not dead yet. What's he doing?
Right.
So as morbid as that sounds, I developed different, I would say a different perspective on a lot of things. And one
Hmm.
perspective I developed, because I did come out on the other side, was the idea and the concept that you really are capable of doing anything you want.
Mm.
Or I'm the perspective I developed was one, because I went through the two cancers basically during the developmental years of my life. You imagine looking at life a little bit differently, because your friends, a quote unquote normal teenager, is focused on being popular, the nicest hairstyles, the nicest clothes, nicest shoes, being in the popular cliques. Um,
Yeah.
I was literally focused on living. And
Mm.
I never got caught up in that stuff. I never got wrapped up in it.
Yeah. So this idea of, being focused on living, what did that actually look like during this time? Like how did you survive this?
Well, imagine with the second cancer, imagine going to bed tonight
Hmm.
terrified to close your eyes because you don't know if they'll open up the next morning.
I mean, just so much fear. I can't even begin to imagine.
Yeah, and I ended up getting comfortable being uncomfortable, because I had no
Mm.
choice. Night after
Hmm.
night after night, I was terrified to go to sleep. I fell asleep because of exhaustion, not because I
Right.
wanted
You weren't
to.
falling asleep.
Yeah,
You were passing
yeah.
out.
But
Wow.
eventually, I think thanks to the miracle of modern medicine, family support, prayer, and just an inner will to get up out of the hospital, I made it back out. But it
Mm.
helped me. Looking back at it, people are like, well, would you change anything? Would you get rid of the? Absolutely not. I would keep it the same. Because
Really?
absolutely, because it helped me develop the resiliency muscle that I
Yeah.
have now. I know what it's like to fight for my life. I know what true pain really is. I know what being an outcast feels like. I know what being overweight feels like. I know what it's like to be so many different
Mm.
things wrapped up in one little body.
Yeah. You really have experienced just so many different types of pain that now you're able to empathize and connect with others on such a much deeper level than maybe some of us could.
Yeah, I mean, it could be, and I think one of the things that going through this treatment has taught me was because I was bald at such a young age. I was heavy. I was overweight. Everything. I went through it all.
Mm-hmm.
Even now, I'm completely non-judgmental. I do the best I can to not judge a book by its cover. And I wish
Right.
more people could do that, because you don't know what that person is going through. You don't know if that person is going through a bad day. Now, in that same breath, if I'm driving down the highway and somebody cuts me off, do I get pissed off and flip them the bird and honk? Yeah, probably, but I get over it very quickly.
Sure. I mean, it's different though. That's reactivity versus this idea of non-judgment, right? That you're bringing up. I mean, it's how could you be judgmental when you had experienced so much yourself? I mean, it truly does sound like one of the most humbling experiences it could have been.
I think that's a great way to say it. It was a humbling experience, right? Because oftentimes you're going through life and you realize that you don't think that you don't feel like you're in control. And sometimes you aren't. But on those moments that you are in control, those moments that you do feel strong, take advantage of them.
Mm. Yeah.
Like I said, being a keynote speaker, one presentation I gave, I was coming down and I was wrapping up the conference, and I got a phone call from my oncologist right after my checkup. The blood work, CBC platelets, all that stuff. I go in once a year for a checkup because no one's ever had these two cancers before. I'm going to be in remission for the rest of my life. I'm never going to be cured. So I go in once a year for a checkup. And as I was going down, the doctor called me and she told me that everything was fine. All my blood work came out, and I see it as a new, I have another year to live. And I sent out a message to some friends, and they're like, YOLO, man, hashtag YOLO, all over Instagram and social media. And I started thinking about that while I was giving my talk on stage, and I completely changed how I wrapped it up. And I told them, you know what? You only live once. I think we have that backwards. People need to look at it a little differently. It's not you only live once. You only die once. You live every day. And I think that's
Wow.
what really
Yeah.
taught me, cancer's really taught me.
Wow. That's a really interesting way of looking at that. I've never thought of that before. Wow. So, I mean, it almost sounds like this idea of mindfulness, right? That like you really just have to be present in each moment that you're living, because who knows, right? Tomorrow's not promised, right? It certainly wasn't promised for you growing up. So what a wonderful perspective through such a heavy time. I can only imagine.
Like I said, sometimes you're not in control, but in reality, you can always control how you react. In every situation, if you are mindful, bring up the term that you just mentioned, whatever happens to you, you might not have control over getting cancer. You might not have control of someone cutting you off. And more often than not, you don't have control, but you always have control over how you react in every situation.
Yeah. Well said. I mean, that's something I do a lot with my own clients, right? I mean, there's so many people coming in because, one of the biggest things that causes us to stress is those things that are out of our control, right? Which is a lot. When we sit down and look at what's in our control versus what's out of our control, I mean, the gap is just huge, right? And so many clients coming in and there's so much distress because I can't control what I'm thinking. I can't control how I'm feeling, right? But you're 100% right. One of the biggest things that we can control is how we either react or how we respond to a situation, right? And there's healthy ways of doing that, and there's certainly unhealthy ways. And how are some of the ways that you were reacting through this turbulent time?
Initially, like everybody, why me? Why me? Why did I get cancer? I was healthy. I ate broccoli. Why am I have cancer? But asking that question wouldn't change the situation.
Right.
So people have said it before. Why not me? Or asking why me? I could do that 1,000 times to come up with 1,000 different answers.
And you probably did.
Absolutely. But it wouldn't change the fact that I had cancer. It wouldn't change the situation. And it wouldn't give me any closure. So why wouldn't I just move forward with the best attitude that I possibly could?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you say that, but then for so many, that's so difficult, right? I mean, depression, anxiety, stress just swallows them, right? And this is even more than just terminal illnesses, right? This is just in life. Some people have much better circumstances than maybe you did as a kid, and yet still are just swallowed by the depression, anxiety that maybe comes with their experiences.
Because they're focused on what they don't have. They're focusing on lack as opposed to what they do have. So one of the things that I really, really became good at was every evening, I never thought to myself, well, I did, but eventually I changed it. I didn't think to myself, you know, I didn't accomplish this. I couldn't accomplish that. I can't do this. I can't. I was a competitive athlete for years before I got cancer. I think I still have swimming records from when I was 10 years old. And then all of a sudden this happened, right? I had my sights set on the Olympics. I was going to be like Michael Phelps, you know, and then swimming back and forth. I have the big palms for it. So, and the big flippers. I got size 12, size 13 feet. And I decided to change it and look at everything that I could do, everything that I was able to accomplish that day. So as opposed to going to bed every night, being focused on what I couldn't accomplish, what I didn't do, I went to bed with an attitude of gratitude. And for people who, a lot of people who are anxious are living in the future. A lot of people who are depressed are living in the past. I was forced to live in the moment, which I still do. And I'm grateful for, and my wife and I do this every night we go to bed. I actually have a journal, but if we're say we're traveling or we don't have the journal, we list off 5 things that we're grateful for that happened that day. Not I'm grateful for my house, I'm grateful for my health. You know, specific things. Like tonight, I'll say I'm grateful for the podcast that I had with you. And
oh, Sean.
but then we go into talking about why one of those 5 is we're most grateful for that because of blank. And when you attach that because, it really helps you tap into your personal core values, which then helps you forget about being anxious, which helps you forget about being depressed, because now you're focused on what matters most to you, which is your personal core values.
That is huge. I mean, that I can't help but make that connection to my story with Aconcagua, right? Which I knew was just going to come up naturally with, you know, everything that you've done. And you know, I was just so angry. Like, I don't even remember if we connected much afterwards. We connected before where you gave me so much, you know, helpful insight and we just had some good talks beforehand, but I didn't summit. I don't know if you knew that. And it was because I got HAPE, and it was just such a frustrating experience for me. I reacted so poorly. I was just so angry. I was like, I put so much training into this, so much money. Like, I had so many expectations from other people going into this, and to have something again out of my control, right? Couldn't control the HAPE. But it for the first like probably a year or two after it happened, I had such a negative perception on it. And it took me so long to kind of flip it, like how you're saying, to focus on the gratitude aspect. And man, there was so much that I learned from it. I'm a changed man because of that trip, right? There's so much that I learned from that. And just so hearing you talk about that, it's really stirring with me of like how it took me a lot longer to, or maybe it took me a while to, really flip that and really flip my perspective on that trip.
And to let people know what HAPE is, I mean, it's basically altitude-induced fluid, your lungs filling with fluid, pulmonary edema, you know, high altitude-induced pulmonary edema. And I mean, that's a serious condition.
Yeah, I mean, it was serious. Like, I remember they were telling me, we were at base camp, so this was Plaza de Mulas, and you know, even that day, we had done a day where we hiked up to Confluencia first, And then we did a day trip to the South Face. And so we were slowly acclimating, but I just remember the day we ended up finally making the trek up to base camp, I was struggling near the end, and, went to the base camp doctor, and they're like, oh no, your oxygen levels are good. Like you should be good. Next day, like my oxygen levels had dropped from the 90s to like the 60s. Like it was pretty dramatic. And I remember that day where I ended up having to go down there, like you have to go down today. Otherwise you're going to die if you stay up here. And it was just like such a surreal moment where, that's never been something I've had to confront before, my own personal death. And so thinking of your story, like that was your story every day, it sounds like, for years.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say my lungs were full of fluid.
well, maybe not that dramatically, but in a different way. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to picture like the fear, the frustration, the defeat that I had that day. Like I'm trying to picture like what that must have been like for you.
Well, you end up getting used to it, and I don't. Well, maybe. But I take that back. You don't get used to the frustration. You just learn how to deal with it better.
Yeah.
And in all honesty, I take a group up Kilimanjaro every year as a fundraiser for a cancer charity, right?
Right.
And we're going again in July. I just got back in February. We tested it out as an inspedition as opposed to an expedition. Because inspedition. Because so many people, I coined that term in October. Because so many people think when they go on the trips, like, oh, I'm going to conquer that mountain. If it's you versus Mother Nature, she's going to kick your ass every single time. I don't care who you are. She's taking you down.
100%.
So the mountain becomes a metaphor for life, essentially. And you learn to conquer yourself, not the mountain. So an inspedition is an inward journey via an outward adventure. So when you were on the mountain, you were going through your own inspedition when you had to deal with the mentality part, the mental part, and the physical part. So it had nothing to do with the mountain. It had everything to do with you. Again, being that situation, you can't control what's going on. It just is. It is what it is. But that was an inward journey that you went on. That was your personal expedition.
100%. I mean, you're 100% right. That's why I think I can speak for you. That's why we love the outdoors so much, right? Because you can't help but get those experiences when you take the time to disconnect, right? To isolate yourself in the wilderness, not necessarily isolate where you're by yourself, but sometimes, but where you're just disconnected from the busyness of life. You're with good people, and you can't help but have good reflections, good times of solitude, good times of gratitude when you're in the wilderness. Like it's just a given.
Yeah, it is. It's beautiful. And this past trip up Kilimanjaro was my 22nd summit. Right?
Wow! And, congratulations.
Thanks. And the groups I take up, we have double the mountain success rate. So the average success rate on Kilimanjaro is 45 to 48%.
Really?
We're at 99%.
Wow!
And I think it's because we have that deeper purpose. And purpose equals passion. Passion equals meaning. And if you have a deeper desire, a deeper meaning behind something, as opposed to, I'm going to conquer the mountain. And again, it's very metaphorical if looking at life, where so many people think the new car is going to bring them happiness, or for a lot of guys, the new wife, the new girlfriend, whatever it might be, the new house,
right?
The new job when I get a raise is going to bring me happiness. And happiness is an internal job. It's an inside job. And a lot of people don't realize that the stuff out there isn't going to change how you feel. It's what it represents to you. So looking back at Aconcagua, you wanted to reach the summit for a reason. That was your reason for being there. And it wasn't the mountain that you're disappointed in. It was yourself.
Oh, yeah. 100%. Yeah. Couldn't have said it better myself, Yeah. That's amazing. I'm stuck on 22 times. Like could you just share a little bit? I mean, I want to get to you sharing a little bit about just your experiences trekking, Everest and just the seven summits in general for the first time. But could you share a little bit now, just your experiences with leading the groups up Kilimanjaro and what that has been like for you?
People often ask me, "Oh, why do I keep doing it?" And again, it goes back to being a fundraiser for a cancer charity. And every year we pay for a survivor's trip to go for free. And then it's the responsibility of that survivor to raise funds for next year's survivor, kind of paying it forward. Right? Great business model, and it keeps it close to the family. The cancer
Wow.
family. And again, it gives that survivor a deeper purpose because we have names on a flag that have been touched by cancer we take to the top. But for me, it has nothing to do with the mountain. It has everything to do with the people. Like, I know I can make it up there. I've been up there 22 times. I know what the challenge is like. I know how to figure out the problem to make it up to the summit. And I think you get to a stage in your life, and I wouldn't necessarily say an age, but a stage in your life where you get more out of giving. And if you look at it, say, you kind of equate it to Christmas, where, I don't need anything, but I love giving gifts to my nieces and my nephews and my wife, my family. I love seeing their smile from the opening up the present. That's what it's like getting up to the top of Kilimanjaro now. I love, and this is going to sound really bad, but I love seeing people cry. I love seeing those emotions come out because it's raw, unfiltered emotion. And I know in an instant it changes their lives. And I think more than anything, it's Kilimanjaro is about encouragement and helping people see something in themselves that they don't necessarily see, but I do.
How cool is it for you? I mean, just this journey you've been on, for you to shift from this being your own, I don't know if I can speak to this, but it sounds like this was like almost like a personal rescue for you, where this transformed your life, right? Doing these 7 summits, doing the North and South Poles, right? And now being able to transition to the facilitator, to the leader, where you're able to give those same experiences that you had and you're able to help facilitate that for others. Like, how special. I mean, wow.
I absolutely. And I think it's a great vehicle to lead people, but going up Kilimanjaro and working with clients that I have and keynote presentations, everything I do, it's weird because I don't lead like most people do. I'm not at the front of the pack. I'm actually going up for the summit night on Kilimanjaro. I'm the last in the group, but I'm doing that because I'm keeping an eye on everybody, making sure they don't wander too far off the trail. We do have a local guy who I've been up there with now 21 times, 22 times. He's leading them up. I'm at the back, I'm hauling caboose, keeping an eye on people. And usually every day I'm behind, encouraging them to go out and explore. However, when it gets dangerous, I'm the first one up there to take the first step, to lead the way. But I think oftentimes people have this misnomer that you have to be at the front of the pack to lead, when in all honesty, you can lead from behind. You just have to be,
how does that, oh, sorry, what did you say?
You have to be a strong leader and you have to be confident and lose the ego. That's what it is. It's not about you, it's about the others.
That might have just answered my next question, was like, how do we apply that to non-Kilimanjaro life?
Realize that you don't need to be at the front of the pack. If you want to be a successful leader, that reflects itself in who you're leading. It has nothing to do with you. It has to do with the team. And if you're leading properly, whether from the front or from behind, success doesn't solely rely on you. It relies on the team. But if you can lead from behind and encourage people to go out there, it's almost akin to when a child's trying to figure out a problem or a puzzle. And if you go in there and do it for themselves, if you go in there and do it for them, they're not going to have any ownership of that. They're not going to be as proud as they would be if they figured it out on their own. So they don't have that attachment to that success. But when you encourage
Yeah.
people to stick with it, you can do this. When you're empowering others to stick with it, to have that resiliency, to move forward, then they own that. And then they're even more proud.
Wow. What a cool role that you get to play doing that. I mean, man, I'm coming one year. It's gonna happen.
Come in July, man.
Oh, maybe. Yeah, it's happening at some point. So I'm excited to get to experience this firsthand. So it'll happen. I promise.
Yeah, and it's fun too, because this past trip we tested it out with the whole expedition concept. And every evening we give you, so pretend you're coming on the trip. We'll give you a journal while we're back in Moshi at the hotel. And then every evening we'll give you a sticker to put at the top of each one of the pages wherever you're done writing. And it's like a daily insight for the next day. And it relates back to, say, like mindfulness, the compound effect, personal core values. So we plant the seed the night before, and then we focus on certain things that are metaphors that happen on the mountain that you can relate back to in real life.
See, I love that. Like, that is what these trips should be about. And I love that you're doing this for your people, the people who are coming on these trips. And this is what facilitates personal growth, right? It's not about summiting, right? That can be a huge part of it, but that's not what it's about. It's about what you're doing as the facilitator and what you're talking about now. So that's so cool.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I tell people who are interested, like I said before, I have double the success rate from the mountain's average. And I think one of the reasons is because we're the only group on the mountain singing and dancing and having fun. And the summit becomes a byproduct of having fun. Like, if you're enjoying what you're doing, you're going to be successful.
100%. Well said. Well, cool. Could you share a little bit, like, we talked a lot about, your time with cancer, your time with Kilimanjaro in specific. Tell me just a little bit about what the experience was like for the first time, right? Because you did Everest. Everest was the first mountain, right?
Everest was number one.
Yeah. So could you just, this might be a little bit of a dive into your most recent book, but could you just share a little bit about what that experience was like for you?
Well, it was it was both terrifying and satisfying at the same time.
I couldn't imagine anything less.
Because I was told by probably 99.9% of the population that I talked to, everybody I spoke to, and the public, they said it was impossible to climb Everest with one lung. So I
was just going to add, like, I don't think we've said that yet. You only have one lung as a result of the cancer. Right?
I have both lungs, but only one fully functions because the radiation therapy destroyed my right lung so much. There's so much scar tissue. There's really no oxygen transfer. So
but they left it in there.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay,
So it's still hanging out there, kind of like Nemo's lucky fins, just like my lucky lung hanging out.
It's your lucky lung. Yeah, I love it. But so you have one like fully functioning lung, and this was before Everest, and so you're saying, oh yeah, I'm gonna go hike up Everest, right? And they're like, oh, what? You have one lung, right? Like, how is that even possible?
I'm glad you said that, because actually I'm looking on my cards, like my business cards. One of my favorite quotes.
Oh, let's see it.
Is right there.
It's a little blurry on my end. It won't be in the final product.
It says, it
always seems impossible until it's done.
Exactly.
Oh, that's awesome.
So it's a quote from Nelson Mandela. It's one of my favorite quotes, and it's so true. Because when people think something's impossible, they don't even go after it until someone else does it. Then they think, oh, it's possible to do that. So what I'm doing now is I'm hoping to inspire other people to believe in themselves. So if a guy, climbed up Everest, and I was terrified, but at the same time I was excited, and I focused on the mountain. I utilized and used what I learned when I was going through my cancers. So, for example, when I was 60 pounds overweight, the first time going through cancer at 13 years old, I remember being on my hands and knees in the shower, and the water was starting to fill up in the shower because the hair kept falling out. in clumps.
Right.
And I had to pull the hair out of the drain to let the water down. But I was on my hands and knees, 60 pounds overweight, bald from head to toe, weeping. But I also
Mm.
realized I didn't want to focus on not dying. I wanted to focus on living.
Right.
So the same thing going up Everest. I wasn't focused on not falling off the ladders, spanning crevasses. I was focused on making it to the other side. I wasn't focused on not slipping and falling down the mountain. I was focused on making it to the top. You know, it's
Mm.
very similar to life. I guarantee you, any entrepreneur gets into business, or any business owner, or anyone for that matter, they don't take a job. They don't get into what they're doing thinking, "Oh, I don't want to lose money."
Right.
Same
I
thing
want
in
to
life.
make money.
Exactly. Same thing in life.
Yeah.
Same thing with climbing a mountain. Same thing with anything.
Mm. When were the seeds first planted that you were like, I want to do this. I want to try this?
Jacksonville, Florida, when I dropped out of school, and I just started thinking, what can I do to inspire the cancer community? And
Mm.
initially, I thought, well, maybe I can run from LA to New York, and and
Do
visit.
people do that?
What's that?
Do people do that?
Yeah, I'm sure they do. I don't. Maybe not running. I know they do it on a bike race.
Okay, wow. Yeah, I don't know that. Yeah, but you were dreaming big.
Big, and I just kept thinking bigger and bigger and bigger. And like I said, naturally, the highest platform in the world.
Yeah,
And I wanted to give
nothing
people
higher.
hope.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing, man. I can't help but just be I've read your story multiple times. I hear it a lot just through social media, and I just can't help but be inspired each time. I mean, it really is amazing.
Well, I appreciate that. I really do. But also remember that we're all living different lives, and we can all inspire others.
Yeah.
Take what I've learned, apply it to your own life, inspire other people.
Hmm.
We're
Yeah.
all not going to climb Everest, but we all have an Everest to climb.
Right. Well, that's the goal,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. I'm glad you're writing those books. I mean, yeah, making that more applicable approach to it. Because you're right, not everybody's going to go do Everest or Killy or Aconcagua or whatever it may be. But we do have these mountains to climb in our own lives. Whether it's the past childhood trauma that maybe we've experienced, whether it's the struggles we have with disordered eating, whether it's this or that, right? I mean, there's just so many mountains that we all have, and it's that's life, right? That's the struggle of life
Absolutely.
and the beauty of life.
Absolutely. I mean, someone's Everest might literally be walking around the block.
Mm.
Getting off the couch, finding the motivation to live, to go exercise again, to eat healthy, to go after, a girl, a guy, to go after whatever you want. And you think, oh my God, that's such a far-fetched concept. I can't do it. Well, take one step,
Mm.
and then take another.
Yeah.
One of the, I have a friend, he's a recovering alcoholic. And he told me something that'll stick with me forever. The first time he went to an AA meeting, they were talking. There was a guy up there saying, I've been clean now for however many years, and the guy goes, I have to stay sober for 15 years, and the answer was no. You have to stay sober today.
Mm.
The same thing. Just pick something that you're going after and do it today, then do
Yeah.
it tomorrow, and then do it the next day. But just today.
Yeah.
That's it. Just today.
Start today, right? Don't worry about the next day.
Right.
Start today. That that is interesting. Like, that makes me think of this piece of research I found recently specifically around substance use, but I think we can, just like what you shared, I think we can apply it to anything. It's what they're starting to find is the most predictive factor for recovery from substance use, whether it's drinking, drugs, whatever. They're finding that the most predictive factor isn't about, showing up to AA meetings or following a strict, regimen of treatment when it comes to sobriety. It's none of that. What the most predictive factor is how many times you try, right? How many times you try to go towards recovery, to go towards sobriety, right? And I think that gives us some hope for any factor of life, right? How many times we try predicts success, right? And so I don't know where I was going with that, but I think it's just interesting, connecting if your stories around Kilimanjaro and just your own personal story with the 7 summits and cancer. I mean, you just did not stop trying.
Yeah, you just one foot in front of the other.
Yeah.
Your first step is never your last. And going back to just all the other quotes, you know what you have to do. You want to do it. Find a deeper purpose. Find not necessarily your why, but find a reason why you're doing it. Check out a core values assessment. I have one. Shoot me an email. I'll send it to you. I put it together myself, and you can find your top 10 personal core values, and then start making decisions based on those. Because we are all where we are in life because of the seemingly mundane decisions that we've made for the X number of lives that we've been, or X number of years that we've been alive. If you want something different, do something different.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah, no, that's huge. I mean, that's become such a huge facet in so many different types of therapies. Like, I do this in my own therapy. I do a lot of value work in terms of, at the very least, starting with what are your top values, right? We do what's called a value card sort and giving it some names and helping them to narrow down, okay, what's your top 5 values, right? And then once we're there, how are you living these values out, right? And how aren't these values being met? And how can we start to strive towards working towards meeting those values and making sure you're living your most authentic life, where if these are the most important things to you, we want to be doing life that lines up with this, which is, it sounds like, is a lot of what you do in your own life and your own work with clients.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you don't know what you value, how are you going to make proper decisions? How are you going to move forward with who you want to become and what you want to become? You can't.
Yeah. So what are some of your top values? I'm curious, like, what have you kind of discovered in your life that these are some of the things that are most important to me?
I was going to say, I have my journal, but it's downstairs, because every three weeks I do my own personal evaluation.
And really? That's awesome.
Yeah. And it's in the journal that I made. And I have that core values assessment and everything else every 3 weeks, but obviously family, personal growth, health. Those are probably some of the biggest ones.
Yeah, good ones.
Yeah, right.
Good ones for sure.
And it depends on what I'm doing as well, because what I value now is probably not on par to what I value when I was 20 in college. It's a little different.
100%. It shouldn't be. Yeah. It'd almost be a little bit concerning if it was, right? Because we grow so much. Like, we're constantly growing, hopefully. And, well, we are growing, whether it's positively or growing backwards, maybe. But, you're right in the sense that it's not going to be exactly the same.
Yeah, not at all. I mean, and even in 3 weeks, it can change. And how you're actually living those values changes. So you can focus on family more. You can focus on your health more. You can focus on, give your attention onto what you want to improve, and then just repeat.
Yeah. No, that's great. Yeah. So you did the 7 summits. So we're talking Everest, Aconcagua, Kilimanjaro, Denali. I'm going to even struggle to remember all 7. Elbrus.
Vincent.
Oh shoot, what's the one? What is it?
Vincent in Antarctica.
Yes. Okay. And then what's the one in Australia?
Oziosku.
The Pacific. Okay. Yeah. So you did all 7 of those, and then you were like, "What's next?" Right? And you did the North and South Poles, right?
Correct. Yep.
And so, could you share like what you actually did during that time?
Well, the South, altogether, the 7 summits and the 2 poles are called the Explorers Grand Slam, which I jokingly say, I think it sounds like a Denny's breakfast platter, but I didn't make it. So
it's exactly what it sounds like. You're like, I got my pancakes, I got my bacon, my eggs.
That would be great if it was like, you get to the North Pole, here's your Denny's Grand Slam breakfast.
Here's your breakfast. Yeah, congratulations.
Right, but the South Pole was pretty moderate compared to the North Pole. Because if you look at the Antarctica, it's a continent. And underneath the ice is land. And the
Right.
North Pole, it's a northern glacier, the Arctic Glacier, right? And if you can picture the world like a giant glass of water, and the ice cubes floating on top of the water, that's what the North Pole is like, and on a massive scale. And
Oh, wow. Yeah.
things are constantly moving around because of the currents underneath. It's like if you spin your glass, the cubes will kind of float around because of the current pushing it around underneath. So because of that, there were a couple of nights where we skied north, say 7 miles, and while we were sleeping, after we set up camp, we floated 2 or 3 miles backwards. So we would only cover maybe 2 miles when we really covered 7. We would float maybe 5 miles backwards. That was a little trippy. Knowing
That sounds trippy
and frustrating, man, because you're sitting there thinking, oh, this is fantastic. We made a great headway today. We covered 10 miles. Awesome. Let's get a good night's sleep. Wake up, check the GPS. Wait a minute. We had to go 3 miles before we even get to where we went to bed last night.
Right. Oh, wow. Because how long did it take you to ski this whole thing?
It's about 10 days, I think.
Okay. So about a week and a half. It's not too long. And you did this relatively recently, right? This was within the last 10 years?
Just a few years ago.
5 years?
Yeah, just a few years ago, because Amazon put a film together.
Right, which I still haven't seen yet. It's on my list. I meant to watch it before our interview, but and that's specifically about the poles, or is that just about your story? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, it covers the whole thing, but the main crux of it is the North Pole, because that's the only one I needed to finish to get the Grand Slam.
Gotcha. Okay. Is that the only document? I say only. Is that the only documentary that's out there about you, or was there one other?
There's the main feature one. Marmot, one of my sponsors, put together something a number of years ago, but the biggest one is the Amazon. It's called True North, the Sean Swarner.
True North, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm gonna make sure to link all that in the episode. But man, yeah, that is so cool. What a cool story, And then you went on. You did the Hawaii Ironman too, right?
Yeah, I figured why not,
You just keep adding more. So like, what's next? Like, is there a next, or is it now just like now the next is me focusing on inspiring and building up the next generation, and or is there like another adventure waiting for you?
There are a number of adventures. The online program I have, the Big Hill Challenge. That's set, that's ready, and I'm also utilizing it within corporations.
Right.
And the next
and what is that again? Can you share a little bit about what the Big Hill Challenge is?
It's basically helping people utilize personal core values through habit stacking to become happier in life. And it helps people develop and discover their own purpose. I had a guy take it. He was a CEO of a corporation. And when he got done with it, he and I had breakfast, and he said, Sean, for the past 20 years, I felt like I was on the hamster wheel, and this is the first thing that's gotten me off of the hamster wheel. And I've had a number of people tell me it changed their lives, which is just amazing. I love hearing that stuff.
Yeah.
The next big thing, I'm hoping, if it works out in January of 2023, I want to run 7 marathons on 7 continents in 7 days. So
7 days?
7 days. We have a start. We're going to start in Antarctica, fly to Johannesburg to Perth, Dubai, Madrid, Santiago, and finish in Miami.
Dude, that would be crazy. Holy moly. Have you run a marathon? Oh, well, yeah, I guess you did wait, is it a marathon in the Ironman?
Yeah, so the Ironman, the one I did was the World Championship Ironman Triathlon in Hawaii. It's basically a 2.5 mile ocean swim, 112 mile bike ride, and then you finish with a marathon.
Well, yeah, just a cherry on top, right?
Man. They used to have it when they used to do the marathons or the triathlons a while back, a long time ago. They had the swimming last, but people would cramp up and they had people die. Like, maybe we should put swimming first.
Yeah. I mean, geez, that's crazy. Man. So, man, I mean, just Wow, that would be crazy. 7 days, 7 continents, 7 marathons. Um, what would training even look like for that?
A lot
I
of
mean,
running.
yeah, like I'm just trying to picture like because I used to be a runner back in the day. I don't know if I told you that, but I mean I say run like I did cross country and track in high school, and so I'm just trying to picture like doing marathon. That's amazing, dude. Kudos to you, and I hope that's a dream you can reach someday if that's on your
I'm hoping.
mindset.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm also taking a group up to Everest Base Camp in October. And then, if all goes well, I'm going to test myself on a mountain called Cho-Oyu, which is an 8,000 meter peak. And I want to
Mhm.
see if it's possible to climb an 8,000 meter peak without oxygen with one lung. Just to
Wow.
see, have the oxygen available to see if it's possible. And then,
Sure.
if that goes well, maybe in 2024, attempt Everest again without oxygen.
I was just gonna ask. So when you did Everest, was it with
Yeah.
oxygen? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, because typically anything 8,000 meter peaks or higher, you typically need oxygen,
Correct. Yep.
right? So, because has anybody done it before without
Oh yeah.
oxygen?
Yeah. Multiple people.
Really?
Well, I wouldn't say
Okay.
multiple
Wow.
people. I guess a handful of people. I
A
don't know how
handful.
many. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Wow. Well, dude, I'm excited to see what's coming. This has been so good. I don't want to take up more of your time. I know we're at the end of the hour, so we can wrap up if you need to. But this has just been. I know I could just talk your ear off for days if if we had time. So this has been so fun to connect. I hope we can continue to connect more, and I'm excited to read your new books coming out.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you for your time and thanks for the opportunity to finally connect. I
Yeah.
know I've been pretty busy for a while and we haven't been able to
Well,
connect, but I'm glad we finally did.
yeah. Well, and I know we will continue, and hopefully next time we can be in person.
Right?
And I always like to end episodes. Any last kind of final remarks, words of wisdom is what I kind of call it, that you want to pass on to my audience?
Words of wisdom. Just find a deeper purpose for life. This isn't a dress rehearsal. We could hop into a car and get into a car crash and die tomorrow.
Hmm.
If uncertainty, if the past 2 years with COVID has been any indication of how uncertain the world is and uncertain life really is, what are you waiting for?
Yeah.
You have goals, you have dreams, you have desires. What are you waiting for?
Hmm. Well said. Thank you, Sean. Really
Hey,
appreciate
man.
having you on here.